Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The sun over Monte Carlo sparkled like 1,000 small diamonds spread across the Mediterranean, but Sheila Carter felt none of its warmth. She stood on the balcony of a small hotel room she had reserved under a fictitious name, the same one she had used to board Finn's flight days before. The metropolis below pulsated with the carefree riches of those who had never had to struggle their way back from the brink of oblivion. Sheila had scratched, she'd scraped, and she wasn't done. The trip to Monaco had not gone according to plan. Steffi and Finn had come on a business trip as well as a private attempt to reconnect, the kind of romantic reset that people with money and clear consciences could afford. Sheila had followed because she could no longer bear the walls of Los Angeles closing in on her. Divorced, isolated, branded. She had persuaded herself that all she needed was a chance to prove she had changed, to be able to stand in the same city as her kid without being treated as a contagion. What she discovered was a different kind of opportunity. It began with a late-night discussion she was never supposed to overhear. Finn had stepped outside a restaurant to answer a call. Sheila, keeping a safe distance, squeezed herself into the shadows of a stone archway and listened. Deacon's name came up first, then Taylor's. Then there was clear enthusiasm in Finn's voice as he repeated the words engagement and private ceremony. Something about waiting until after the Monaco trip. Something about keeping it modest and private, away from the circus that typically accompanied the Forresters. Sheila's hands had gotten cold. She had signed the divorce papers. She walked out of Deacon's life with as much dignity as she could muster. She promised herself she would let him go. But hearing that he intended to marry the woman who had once been her confidant, the same woman who had sat across from her in therapy sessions and then slid into her husband's bed, felt like a knife going through her ribs all over again. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she perched on the edge of the bed and stared at the black water beyond the port, going over every possibility in her head the way she used to go over locks and falsehoods. Violence was not an option. She promised herself that, and she meant it. She couldn't afford to go to prison again. What about sabotage? Interference? A skillfully put truth at the exact right time. She still knew how to use these tools. Sheila already had a plan by the time the jet returned her to Los Angeles. Not a crude one. Not the type that leaves bodies or blood. Somewhat quieter. Something that would make Deacon and Taylor look at each other with the same skepticism she had felt when the world turned against her. She returned home 2 days before the nuptials. Deacon and Taylor had picked a quiet hillside site overlooking the ocean, the type of location that photographed well and could be arranged on short notice if you knew the right people. Invitations had been sent to a carefully picked group of close friends, including Hope and Liam, Steffi and Finn. No media. There's no spectacle. Just the two of them, vowing eternity in front of those who mattered. Sheila spent the first day collecting information. She still had contacts, people who owed her favors and recalled that she could be valuable when she wanted to be. One of them worked in the venue. Another person had access to Taylor's personal calendar. A third knew the private investigator Deacon had hired while he was still concerned Sheila would relapse into her old behaviors. By the evening she had a guest list, a time frame, and the most important detail. Taylor did not tell Steffi everything. The surprise was little but sharp. During the Monaco trip, while Sheila was dealing with Finn's rage and Steffi's icy silence, Taylor confided in a common acquaintance, who later shared it with the wrong person. Taylor remained skeptical. Not about Deacon's feelings, but about her own ability to believe that the past would remain buried. She had admitted, in a moment of weakness that the friend found endearing, that she occasionally awoke wondering if Sheila would ever completely let them go. She laughed it off thereafter. They called it residual trauma. But the doubt was there, documented in a text message that had never been deleted. Sheila didn't have to invent anything. She merely had to ensure that the appropriate people saw the right parts of the truth at the right moment. The morning of the wedding was clear and bright. Sheila dressed carefully, in a basic black dress, with her hair tied back and her makeup minimal. She resembled a woman who had accepted her place on the outskirts. She drove herself to the venue and parked a short distance away before walking the rest of the way through the trees that surrounded the property. Security was light. This was supposed to be intimate after all. She waited until the guests started to arrive. Hope and Liam appeared first, Hope glowing in a delicate blue dress with Liam's hand resting protectively on the small of her back. Steffi and Finn followed, Steffi's expression carefully neutral, Finn's shoulders rigid with Monaco-related worry. Sheila watched them from the shadows of a blossoming jacaranda, feeling a familiar ache. Her son. Her grandson is somewhere with a sitter. A family who refused to accommodate her. Deacon arrived next, already dressed in his suit, and his apprehensive expression caused her chest to clench. He had always been attractive when he was unsure. Taylor arrived a few minutes later in a car driven by a friend, dressed in pale champagne silk that caught the light. They exchanged a private smile, which Sheila pushed herself to observe without blinking. The event was slated for late afternoon. Guests mingled on the patio, sipping champagne. Soft music emanated from hidden speakers. Sheila moved when the time was right, sliding via a side entrance that the staff used for deliveries. She discovered the modest anteroom where the wedding party would congregate before stepping out. No one was present yet. She left an envelope on the table, unmarked save for Taylor's name, which was carefully handwritten. Inside there were 3 objects. The first was a printed copy of Taylor's text message from Monaco, in which she admitted to having a lingering dread that Sheila would never really release Deacon. The second was a brief letter in Sheila's handwriting. I did not have to invent this. You have already written it yourself. Ask yourself why you still can't trust the future you're about to step into. The third was a single snapshot taken years ago, with Sheila and Taylor sitting together in Taylor's office, both of them smiling in what had once felt like the start of something nearly like friendship. Sheila stepped back outside, leaving the envelope. She didn't wait for Taylor to open it. She knew exactly what would happen. By the time the music changed to indicate the start of the ceremony, the mood on the terrace had shifted. Taylor had turned pale. Deacon spoke to her in a low, agitated voice near the property's edge. Steffi looked at them with narrowed eyes. Finn seems to want to be somewhere else. Sheila appeared only after the dispute had gained traction. She didn't raise her voice. She did not have to. I didn't come here to ruin anything, she exclaimed, loud enough for the nearby people to hear. I came because I thought you both deserved to start with honesty, Taylor said. Her outfit, made of champagne silk, appeared unexpectedly frail. You have no right. I have every right, Sheila responded. You took my husband while still calling yourself my friend. You sat across from me and listened to me express my anxieties, then went home and climbed into his bed. And despite everything, you can't quit staring over your shoulder. That mail you sent from Monaco proved it. You're not prepared for this. And he deserves someone who is. Deacon's expression had tightened. Sheila, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, she replied. I am merely holding up a mirror. You desired a clean break. You wanted to move on. Fine. But don't pretend this is clean when the woman you're about to marry still wakes up worrying if I'm going to take it all away again. There was perfect stillness after that. Hope reached for Liam's hand. Steffi's jaw worked. Finn gazed between his mother and the pair, as if he were seeing a slow-motion crash that he couldn't avoid. Taylor's voice, when it arrived, was thinner than normal. You altered this. You waited till now. I waited until you had something to lose, Sheila explained. That's the only language any of you have ever understood. Deacon stepped in between them. It's over. You are leaving. Now. Sheila met his gaze and felt the last of her compassion twist into something sharper. I've already left, Deacon. You're the ones who never really did. She turned and walked away before anyone could intervene. Behind her, she heard the first rising voices, the bustle of people deciding if the ceremony could still go on, and the sound of Taylor's carefully managed demeanor finally breaking. Sheila arrived at her car just as the sun began to set. She sat behind the wheel for a long time, her hands resting on the steering wheel, waiting for the anticipated thrill of victory. did not arrive. Instead, there was a hollow silence, the kind that sets in after a long-held wrath is finally expended. She had cancelled the wedding. This much was certain. Whether Deacon and Taylor would recover from their public split, try again in private, or decide the cost of being together was simply too high, that was no longer her business. She had achieved her goal. She had gotten them to see each other clearly, if only for an afternoon. Sheila reflected on Monaco as she drove home through late afternoon traffic. The glistening water. She fought her way on board the flight. Finn's expression as he realized she was not going to disappear. She had gone hunting for a seat at the table. She had returned with something totally different. The knowledge that some doors remained closed no matter how hard you pounded, and that sometimes the only power left was the ability to ensure no one else stepped through them. At home, she poured a glass of wine and sat in the quiet apartment, which still did not feel like her own. The television remained off. The phone remained face down on the countertop. Somewhere in the city, a wedding that will never happen was being destroyed piece by piece. Guests were leaving. Explanations were required. Blame was being ascribed. Sheila raised her glass as a private toast to no one in particular. She hadn't won anything that would last. She knew that. Deacon would not return. Finn wouldn't abruptly open his arms. The family that had closed ranks against her would only tighten more. But for one afternoon, she forced those who had abandoned her to face the wreckage they had made of themselves. That was sufficient. Outside, the light had vanished. Inside, Sheila Carter sat alone, knowing she could still reshape the story even when it refused to accommodate her. It was not about redemption. It was not peaceful. It was the only form of power she had left, and she utilized it. Tomorrow the penalties would begin. Accusations. Warnings. If Taylor decides to press the subject, he may receive a visit from someone in uniform. Sheila was ready for it all. She'd survived worse. She had survived incarceration, public hostility, and the gradual deterioration of every vulnerable area she had ever attempted to defend. She would also make it via this. And in the silence that followed the devastation of a wedding that never happened, she allowed herself a little private grin. Not because she was pleased, because she was still present, still standing, still able to remind those who thought they had moved on from her that certain ghosts never stay buried for long. Sheila had always believed that Monaco was a place for second chances, or at least the meticulously planned reinventions that both the wealthy and the desperate enjoyed. The Mediterranean light fell differently there, softer on the edges of old misdeeds, and the casino tables gave the impression that fortune could still be made with the right combination of nerve and time. She had not come for the roulette wheels, however. She had come because Deacon Sharp and Taylor Hayes were about to make a costly mistake, and she appeared to be the only one willing to stop them. The invitation had arrived weeks before, elegant and subtle, and announced a destination wedding at a private home overlooking the port. After months of careful reconciliation and gradual rebuilding of trust, Deacon and Taylor chose Monaco as the location for their vows. It was supposed to be a complete departure from Los Angeles, from the never-ending cycles of betrayal and forgiveness that defined their lives back home. Taylor had desired the sea air and the remoteness. Deacon had prioritized her happiness over arguing about the location. They had packed light, left the kids with trusted caregivers, and flew east in the silent hope that this time the future would actually hold. Sheila had followed them. Not on the same flight, she was far too cautious for that, but on a later one, using a name that would not cause alerts. She reserved a suite at a hotel near the villa, far enough away to avoid detection but close enough to keep an eye on things. From her balcony, she could see the terrace where the ceremony would take place, the white chairs neatly set in rows, and the floral arch that would frame the couple when they exchanged rings. She examined the routines of the servants, the entrance of guests, and the way Deacon's hand rested on the small of Taylor's back as they walked the grounds in the evening. She noticed the absence of some persons who could have complicated matters, as well as the presence of others who would later be useful. The days leading up to the wedding were strangely suspended. Sheila glided through Monaco like a ghost on purpose. She went to the casino once not to play, but to be seen by the appropriate people, to give the idea of a wealthy woman with no special objective. She ate alone in restaurants where the waiters recognized faces and listened. In situations like this, gossip spread swiftly. A nurse on vacation from Los Angeles noted over wine that Taylor was glowing, almost serene. A business acquaintance of Deacon's observed that the man appeared lighter than he has in years. Sheila absorbed these data without comment and filed them away. The night before the ceremony, she made her first real move. She set up a secret meeting with a man who owed her more than he wanted to admit, a former associate from her more explosive years, now living quietly in Europe under a new name. He still had access to some records and people. She requested 3 things: proof of a medical file that had never been closed, a copy of a communication that was supposed to remain buried, and the name of someone who could deliver a message without leaving fingerprints. He completed all 3 within hours. Sheila paid him in cash and promised not to contact again until circumstances forced her to. The morning of the wedding was clear and bright. The villa's crew worked with practiced precision, arranging flowers, adjusting chair placement, and testing the sound equipment that would convey the music across the terrace. Guests began to arrive in carefully chosen clothes, their discussions murmuring with curiosity and cautious optimism. Many of them had followed Deacon and Taylor's journey over years of public drama. Some thought this wedding will finally stay. Others were there solely for the sight and the champagne. Deacon stood in a side room, fixing his tie for the 3rd time. Taylor spotted him there, her clothing a delicate ivory that reflected the light as she walked. She stared at him with the peaceful confidence that had before seemed unattainable between them. "You're nervous," she replied. "I'm not used to things going right," he replied. "It feels like waiting for the other shoe." She reached up and fixed her own tie. "No more shoes. Just us." They shared a moment of silence that could have lasted longer if a staff member hadn't knocked to announce it was time. The music started. Guests took their seats. Deacon walked out first, followed by Taylor on the arm of a close friend who agreed to give her away in the absence of relatives. The officiant waited beneath the flowery archway. Everything was as it should be. Sheila waited till the vows were about to start. She didn't storm the terrace. That would have been too blunt, easily disregarded as the rantings of a woman with a long and difficult past. Instead, she stood at the edge of the crowd as if she belonged there, dressed in a tailored suit the color of rich wine. Her hair pushed back, her countenance placid. Several heads turned. Recognition flashed across several faces. Someone in the back whispered her name. Taylor noticed her first. Her face lost its color. Deacon remained motionless as he followed her gaze. Sheila moved slowly, methodically, until she was a few strides from the arch. The music faltered. The officiant appeared uncertain. Guests moved in their chairs. "I'm sorry for interrupting," Sheila replied, her voice carrying plainly across the terrace. "But there are some things you both need to hear before you finish this." Deacon recovered first. "Sheila, this isn't the right time or location." "It is," she said. "Because once those rings are on, certain truths become more difficult to deny. And I don't want to watch any of you get into something you'll regret." Taylor's voice was strained. "We don't want to play whatever game this is. Leave." Sheila shook her head. "I did not come to play games. I came because I've seen what happens when people plan for the future based on insufficient knowledge. I have done it myself. It ends badly." She dug into her small folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She held it out, not at the pair, but in the space between them, where anyone close enough might see the official letterhead and long paragraphs of medical notation. "This is from a private clinic in Switzerland," she said. "A consultation Taylor had 6 months ago. The one she told you was for a routine checkup. It was not. The diagnosis is apparent. Progressive. Treatable for the time being but not indefinitely. The specialists advised her to notify her partner immediately." Taylor's hand moved to her throat. Deacon peered at the page, as if it could change if he looked closely enough. "That's private," Taylor responded, his voice tight. "You had no right."